Hey everybody, welcome back to Euzoia, the podcast where every week we look at another topic about what makes a good life. And more and more have podcast guests that I'm super excited about. So today we're here with Julia Wise. I probably have read blog posts and articles from you since like many years. You are the community health lead at the Center of Effective Altruism, long time involvement in effective altruism. I think you were also like president of Giving What We Can before. A licensed social worker and did a lot of social work back in the days. And I think for me, your voice was always one of reason and also like self-care. So I'm happy to talk to you. And especially today about the topic of children. We are in the kind of in Euzoia's area, in the area of love. And sometimes with love, the question comes up, do we want to have children? And I think you've been writing a lot about this. You have been very public about your thinking. I remember reading your book, not your book, but the excerpt in Strangers Drowning, which, by the way, is an amazing book for anybody who hasn't read it yet. So, super excited to talk with you about this. Before we dive in, anything I missed in the intro, anything you want to add?
No, I think that covers a lot.
All right, cool. Well, maybe I thought a fun point to start off is I read on your Substack that you used to live back in the university days, actually in a share house together with another family with a young child. And I think when most people hear that, like it just doesn't fit our mental model that like young parents live in share houses. So maybe let's just start there. What's that been like?
Yeah, so that was actually like after university, but
Okay.
my husband and I, we had tried living in like a small apartment by ourselves, and we didn't actually like that very much. Some is that I'm an introvert, he's an extrovert, and so when he would come home from work after kind of being isolated in an office all day, he really wanted social time, and I had had a very social job. I wanted to have alone time in the evenings, and so having only the two of us in a household actually wasn't working that well. We were like recently married, and so we tried out the small apartment thing, and we thought we'd actually like to live with other people, both to save money and so that there would just be more options for kind of me to have some alone time, him to have some more people around. And when we were looking for housemates, we talked to another couple who were expecting a baby in a few months' time. And we thought it was a really cool opportunity for us as people who were planning to become parents at some point, to kind of see someone else go through that, like get to help them out a little bit and kind of make a bit more of an informed decision. So I think it was helpful for us to get a picture of like, okay, what does it look like as they're adjusting to life with a baby? We got to do some kind of learning, like, okay, what does life with a newborn look like? And so we lived with them for 1 year until the baby was like 9 months old. So it was a learning experience for us.
Oh.
I think it was helpful for them to have other adults around. I think now that we've parented in a house where we share with housemates, I think there are pros and cons. And sometimes the help is helpful, and sometimes the stress on everyone of dealing with children's noise and so forth is like adds another kind of layer of complexity. But yeah, overall it was a good experience.
How often did you wake up at night because children were crying?
Not at all. They were, it
Oh.
was kind of a long flat, and we were at one end and they were at the other. So it was not nighttime noise. Yeah, I think for us, the noise really wasn't a problem. I think later when we've been sharing with housemates, things like dinner time and our children, yelling or interrupting during dinner is like has been more bothersome to some of our housemates. And we live on the second floor with some of our housemates below us. And so children running around our apartment has been an ongoing topic with our downstairs neighbors. So I think that was one aspect I encourage you to think about in any shared housing arrangement, is different people's noise tolerance and the reality that children and also adults with heavy footsteps need to think about what floor they're on.
I like that framing of like, it helps you to kind of practice or get a better feeling for what it'd be like to have children, right? I moved in with my partner almost a year ago now, and she already had a daughter who's living with us kind of half the time. And it might be biased because she's 9 years old. So like I might only kind of get the super easy, fun view of what kids are like, but it definitely, I think, changed my thinking on children. It's practice is the best way to learn, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I think, people people end up with very different experiences based on, I mean, even at the baby stage, like if there's a baby with colic or who's having a tougher time, I think it's like a pretty different experience than
Right.
one who's like pretty chill. I think also just like how different people experience like taking care of a baby. I think watching this other parent do it, it looked pretty like stressful and boring kind of from watching her be a full-time parent, and I think she enjoyed it less than she was expecting to. And so I went into parenting expecting like, okay, there'll be this like kind of stressful and boring first year. And then I just liked it a lot more than I was expecting to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, some is that your own child is like more fascinating to you than like any other child, and yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised by like my own experience in like the first kind of baby stage. But I think people have like, yeah, you just like don't know what life is going to throw at you, and that's true also with 9 year olds of like. Some are more delightful than others, or some are going through like a rougher stage at any given age.
Maybe, yeah, like to transition, like when I think about like having children, I try to frame it as like you can kind of take different perspectives, right? Like how will it affect me personally? It's like, and this, I guess you can learn by living with children and kind of get an idea or like talk with friends. Another one maybe is like the world, like what kind of effect does it have in the world or like the world they grow up in? And then maybe another one is like what does it actually mean to the child, which is almost like a at least like one stakeholder in this decision, right? Like and I know you have been thinking a lot about like the world or the impact kind of lens on this, right? Like of course there's trade-offs. Like you when you have a child, maybe you have less money you can use to have an impact, or maybe you will have less time or focus or energy. And yeah, I would just be curious like how your thinking was around those dimensions.
Yeah. So those were questions that we thought about a lot. I think I came into this decision already caring a lot about how could I have a positive impact on the world? How could I use my resources to make the world better? And I thought a lot about fairness. And well, there are already people who have children that they don't have the money to, provide for. And it seems there is something very, very unfair about inequality in the world, and the fact that I sort of had enough money to like decide, like, yep, I can just have children and like have enough resources to raise them, and other people don't. And I also thought a lot about what it would, yeah, how it would impact my time and energy and money, that, some of which would be directed to trying to improve the world. And I think it just is true that you can only spread yourself across so many projects, and like your
Right.
resources are finite. And I do have like less time and focus for other projects in my life because parenting is a major project.
Yeah. Yeah.
We haven't said, but I have three children, aged 12, 10, and 5. So when we were making this decision, I did really feel it as like a big kind of ethical decision. I think I'm pretty far on the side of treating like my resources as something that I should like aim to share a lot of. And I think my husband is like more typical in like, well, like our time and our money is like mostly ours, and like sort of more optionally, we can use them to improve the world. So I think having children really involved examining that, like, where are we drawing that line? And we agreed that having children was important enough to both of us in different ways, that we just were going to allocate like some of our family resources to that project. We knew it would take significant money. I think I underweighted the time. I think at the time I was thinking a lot more about like, well, we can donate less if our money is going to the costs of raising a child. And now the time and focus is the one that stands out to me more. So yeah, I think over time, yeah, we decided to have one child, and then decided to, yeah, continue kind of allocating a significant chunk of our
Right.
family resources towards that project because we really liked it. And I think we had two children within 2 years. So like, yeah, pretty intensive kind of parenting stage. And then like waited for a while to see like, oh, did we want to do this again? And I think
Yeah.
like my main hesitation was that it would take away my time and focus from working on these projects that I really cared about in the effective altruism space. And I think, yeah, that is just a tough reality that we always wish we had more to give to the things that are really important to us. And I think that's true for parents especially. And sometimes you end up pulled between things that are like very, very important to you. And that can be a tough place to be in. But we decided kind of after a 5-year gap that we wanted to do it one more time. Like having kids was like one of the best things we've done in our life, and we wanted to do one more.
You say it's one of the best things you've done in your life. It's like, do you think for people who have not had their own children yet, that is possible to grasp, or is it just inherently like a different experience, or like, do you feel like there's an analogy for this, or?
Yeah, I've tried to think about this for people who are unsure about whether to have children. Like, how can you get more information about what it will be like for you? And I think there are surprises, but I think in general, people have like a fairly good grasp on how into children are they. At least I think maybe more commonly for women, I think they have like a stronger sense of like how interested am I in this kind of life project? I think it's more common that for men it feels much less immediate or much gripping until they're like actually parenting. I think, yeah, for example, when we lived with another couple, my husband just was much less interested in the baby than I was. And like I really wanted to like learn about babies, feel like I was practicing and skilling up so that I would be like more prepared as a parent. And like it just wasn't something he was into. Like he was fine. He would help out when asked, but like, and then, yeah, when our own first child was born, yeah, it was like a project that he was supporting me in basically. And then like after she actually exists, yeah, it like clicked for him and like became like intensely meaningful to him in a way that it hadn't been like really real for him before, I think. Then I think there are also people who find that the click doesn't happen in the same way, or the intense love that I think like almost all parents feel for their children comes along with a lot of other difficulties, and it's always going to be a mixed bag, but I think for some people the like mixture is more painful than others. So yeah, I wish I had a better recipe for like how to get a clear picture of what parenting will be like for you. And I think there's both an unknown in terms of like how will it land for you as a person, and also just like what will parenting throw at you? Like will your child have like special needs that just require a lot more energy? Or yeah, other like medical situations that can just like make life a lot more stressful for a family, and you just never gonna know.
I think I very early on I read this book, Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids by Brian Kaplan, and I
Yes.
actually do have friends who like made the decision to have kids based on this book. Well, at least partly, which I thought always a bit funny and extreme. But I think one of his points is, hey, like if you have a kid already, having more actually won't add much more of a burden compared to the kind of initial hit you're taking in terms of like money and time. Did that feel like this to you, having three children?
So yeah, and there is some data on this. So time use data does indicate that it's not that much more in terms of minutes per day that parents spend on kind of parenting tasks with additional children. I think, especially fathers, I think where the data doesn't capture everything is the kind of attention that is needed for, I find, especially under about 18 months. They just need much more engagement and more close supervision. I find that once they get to, yeah, around 18 months or 2 years, when they can be kind of like in a room and they're not that likely to sort of put random objects in their mouth and choke and die, I was able to kind of like relax more, or there's more that you can kind of like do in parallel with them while they're kind of like doing their own thing. They're playing with their siblings, they're playing with, whatever interests them. And you can be doing a bit more of your own thing. I felt like I got more freedom kind of once we got to that point. And so I think when you're in this zone of parenting like young children, like under 2, it just is much more intensive, and you restart that cycle every time you have a new baby. So I think it is a real, and also the cost in terms of like sleep disruption, which varies quite a bit by family. I think some people, through some combination of the child like naturally sleeping better and kind of what strategy the family uses, I think that's less disruptive for some, and then like much more for others, and that can last like years. I think for us the sleep disruption was typically over around like 1 to 2 years, depending on, at one point we were all
Right.
sharing a bedroom out of necessity, and or actually at multiple points as we were kind of moving towards our long-term housing, but there were some bumps in the road to that. So I think, yeah, just like when you're sharing rooms or bedroom beds with your children, like sleep is more disrupted, and like my cognitive like attention was affected, especially during the first year. But I think, yeah, now we're reaching a point where, yeah, our older children can really do more of their own thing. They can walk around to different places in the neighborhood and go visit friends and get themselves to school. And so it feels like things are really kind of like opening up. Um, and some of that is like, where we live. I think it depends a lot on the environment you're in and, are you needing to drive them to lots of places or can they go places on their own? So I think, yeah, now we're kind of entering this like older child stage, at least for the older two. And then our 5-year-old still wants and needs a lot more engagement. But that's also very like delightful at times. I mean, like the other day I needed to do laundry. So I said, do you want to help me put the laundry in? This slows down the process like greatly. But she's like, yes, we go down to the basement. She loads the laundry. She's so proud. She's doing the machine, everything. And then we press start and then she's like, let's watch it. So we get out my like flashlight on my cell phone and we just spend 5 minutes like watching the washing machine do its different things. And it has all these different cycles of sometimes it's just swishing and sometimes it's spraying. And like, so yeah, the engagement is more intense in both good and bad ways, like the younger they are.
That sounds magical, actually. I think one thing, at least some people in my circles worry about is like, children is like, I'm just not ready yet. Like, I don't have like the resources, I need a house. I need to be like a fully grown adult who like has figured out everything before I can kind of take the next step to have children. How are you thinking about that? When did you actually have your first child? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we got married at 23 and we had our first child at 28, I think.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I think we were on the like earlier side for our friend group or like our education level.
yeah,
I think we got lucky in a lot of ways to kind of find that stability earlier on. I think I mean the most key thing is having a partner that you want to raise children with. I think
yeah, yeah,
that's like the hardest to change or like impossible really to change. So I think that feels like a key thing to get right and I feel like it was lucky for me that kind of like came into place like early in my life. I think especially for women who know that they want to raise kids and it's sort of often a question of like, if their partner is a man, like how into that is he and does he want to sign up for that? I've just seen a lot of couples where that's like kind of the main crux on like, are they going to stay together? Is like, is this a lifelong project that they want to run together? And so I think that decision matters a lot. I think looking back to past generations and just like what do people do worldwide? I think in rich countries, the standard of like what we consider to be enough money to raise a child on is just like wildly higher than what almost everyone in the world has raised a child on. And that's true both in other places of the world and what our own grandparents and beyond were doing. And I think like there's some things about that are really good. Like I'm really glad that I can have paid childcare. Like I don't want to be a full-time parent. Like I did that in the early days and it's not my favorite period of parenting. I was relieved when I could go use my cognitive skills to like be at work as well as doing a lot of like childcare work during the other parts of the week. So I think some of it is kind of, yeah, what are your expectations set relative to? I think if you're looking around at your peers in like rich, educated circles, it's like, oh, yeah, they are waiting a long time to form like a long-term partnership and to have children. And that's historically like very unusual. And I think there are good things about that allow people to have more yeah, like more choice. And, I wouldn't want to go back to the period where it was like much more just sort of mandatory for everyone or a default that was really hard to break out of. But I think just like also when you look at what people say they want, as far as how many children would they ideally have, and kind of people's then how many children do they actually have? People say earlier
right.
in their life that they want more children than is typical to have. And I do think it's worth looking through that lens of like, okay, when I'm 40, when I'm 60, what am I going to wish I had done now?
Right. Yeah.
And you can't go back and make those choices at that point in your life. And so you can do them while you're younger. And I think taking a leap of committing to a partner, committing to having children. I mean, and children is truly like a lifelong commitment in a way that a partner is possible to reverse.
Yeah.
I think it is scary, and it's also where a great source of meaning comes for probably I would guess most people, like most people in the world are parents, by the time they've like reached some age. And so I think there is, yeah, wrestling with that uncertainty of like, oh, how do I know if I'm certain enough? It is a really difficult choice, but I think looking at like, well, the default is that people who like most people have children and most people say that that was like a good decision.
Yeah,
And I think
100%.
there's certainly a bias there of like, well, once you know your children, I think it would feel emotionally difficult both to admit to yourself and to say to another person, like, this was the wrong call for me. And certainly there are people for whom it was the wrong call. But I think my life has been greatly enriched by making commitments and sticking to that.
Yeah, and I know plenty of people who say they took a job and it wasn't the wrong call, or they have a partner and it wasn't the wrong call. I know very few who say they have children and it wasn't the wrong call. So I think there's, yeah, maybe just to drill down into this a little bit, you said like it gives a lot of people meaning, right? And I think like also if you look at the research, like it's not super clear or like may just have a lot of variation how much like pure like day-to-day happiness you get from this, right? Like of course there's like also stress and there's all these things, but like meaning seems to be very clear that like it gives a lot of people meaning. Now you sound like somebody who already had a lot of meaning in your life, right? Like you did social work, you were very active in effective altruism, you donated a lot of your money. Like looking at you from the outside, you could say, well, maybe the meaning is like maxed out already. Like how could it kind of go even higher? But I'm guessing that's not the case, right? Like how does it feel for you?
I think they land in very different places. I think like in a more kind of like cerebral place, yes, I did like know that I was having an impact. And I think especially in face-to-face work in social work, it's like that's one of the fulfilling parts of that job is like having the more direct interactions where people you tell you that you made a difference. And I think that can make up for a lot of the stressful parts of the job. But in a lot of forms of work, I think that's much less kind of available to us in our kind of mammalian brain that really wants to kind of like experience things more directly. And I think it lands in very different places. So like I know that I've had a lot of impact by donating and helping, for example, a lot of our donations have been to public health interventions in lower income countries. And like, I know cognitively that like by donating to anti-malaria charities, I have helped other parents provide nets or medication that save their children's lives. And I know that there are a lot of families out there who have living children who wouldn't otherwise. And like that is very meaningful. And that's like, we do it for the impact. We do it because we know that it's like really changing things for other people. But that knowledge, I don't carry that knowledge around with me like in my mind and in my heart on a day-to-day basis. I think that like I think about that when we're making the decisions, but there's a way that things that you do on a daily and hourly and like minute basis are just much more immediate and affect your day-to-day experience like much more deeply. And I think like children are just like the most immediate and like ongoing and like ever present kind of like, project that you can do. And their need for you, their dependence on you, the like interchange of love and dependence and entwinement with them is more intense than any other relationship. And it just affects you in a very different way.
Yeah, totally. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe one last thing. Like we talked a lot about the decision to have children, how it feels and like all these things. And that's what this article is about because I just don't feel qualified to like talk about anything that comes after because like I've not been a parent. But I've seen that you remarked left in some places how different like and how maybe one-sided or radical like most parenting advice is and like how like completely contradictory it maybe also sometimes is. So that's even more of a reason that I shied away from like giving any kind of how to raise a child blog post. I'm just curious to kind of get your take on this. Like, if you feel like there is specific things that are like where kind of everybody agrees on, or is it like, I don't even know what to ask, but I'm sure you
Yeah,
understand
there
the
is.
question I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, there is so much contradictory advice about everything from, I mean, sleep is one area that people have very strong feelings about and very different methods on. I think some of the like medical care questions, certainly like behavior and discipline and stuff, people have just like very different approaches. I think there are multiple approaches that can work. And I think part of it is finding like what makes sense to me as a parent. What do I think I can carry out? So I think with sleep, for example, I think there are people who look at a method and they're like, I cannot do that. Like that's not going to work for me. And they see other families that it does work for. But like if you feel like this is not going to fit, this is not going to work, don't pick that method. And I think likewise with discipline, people have like very different, yeah, kind of modes that make sense to them and that feel natural to them. And I think something that you can carry out consistently is probably going to be a better guiding star for like helping you find a method. And I think sort of applying a method that you don't fully understand or really agree with, or it doesn't feel very natural to you, I think that's unlikely to stick. You're unlikely to be very consistent with it. I think a thing that has given me a lot of comfort is we are all descended from a very long line of mammals that kept their children alive. And like many people less competent than me have done this job with like an okay level of success. And so I think when I'm just like, oh my God, how am I going to keep this baby alive? I'm just like, well, like everyone before me did it. And like infant mortality is actually like much lower than it used to be. And I think instinctively, sometimes it felt like this is so hard. Like, how? If this were a job, like the pay would have to be extremely high for anyone to sign up for it. Like, and yet knowing like, okay, like we have these deep instincts that, have worked over time. And, of course, sometimes people make really bad decisions or, like mistakes happen, but I think it gave me some faith in like, okay, I'm just got to do my best, just like everyone else has done. And like, my parents made mistakes, my grandparents, like everyone that led to this chain of me parenting this child, like somehow we kept them alive and like it's probably going to come out okay.
Yeah. Well, that's a very encouraging and empowering ending to this. Thank you very much, Julia. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Where can people find you if they are interested? I think you're writing a
Yes.
Substack at
Yeah,
what's
so
the
I
Substack name again?
I write juliawise.net is one place to find me, and then it's also cross-posted on Substack. So if you search for Julia Wise on Substack or on Google, you'll find me.
Amazing. Thanks so much for making the time.
All right. Thanks very much for the conversation.